Hi there, it's Mare. I have a quick journal share to bring you today, and I want to thank all of my subscribers. And if you wait to near the end, I'm going to get into just showing you the covers of the little journals that I have, or the smaller journals that I have, and one of them will be the free gift for a giveaway. So today is this journal here, and I just completed it. It is approximately 9 by 5 and it has about 64 pages front to back, give or take a couple. They're not all surfaces to write on, but you'll see when we open it up. Basically, it's all cream black, little bits of floral here and there, but very neutral tones. And I just think she turned out beautiful. And I have used some of my antique lace that I have been secretly hoarding. And I've just thought it went really well with this theme. And as many of you know, I love the 1800s to the early 1900s. And I've also used new laces, vintage laces, a lot of original ephemera in this one. I have double tied. I've used double string wax thread to bind this, and I've just put some bows on them and put some beading at the end, which I thought looks really cool and pretty. And this here is the antique lace here, and here this is newer, but it went really well. And I love the way it lays. Vintage looking rusted safety pin with a key charm here and a little scrap of my antique linen stuff that I have. I made a pocket from this front, and there's a bookmark in here. I'm not going to show all the ephemera. There is a lot of it in here. Some is very brittle, so if whoever gets this, just remember that. Some vintage doily here is some creepy cloth, and this is a vintage book. It is embossed, but all this natural scuffing and roughness, and I just really loved that. Let me show you the back. This is the closure, some muslin, tea-dyed muslin fabric. There's the back of cover of the book. It's a soft, rounded spine here that it has been reinforced, and a little mini pocket here that I'm gonna stick a little something in there, a little secret pocket, and I love those things. And let me show you the inside. This area is nice and clean and clear, and if you've ever seen the movie 17 Again, there is a scene, and I don't know why I get reminded of that when I look at my table, because there's a scene that I guess somebody had a party or something. From what I remember, it's been a long time since I've seen it, and the guy, the camera focuses in, the guy's usually like a dustbuster type thing of those. I'm probably aging myself, but the little dustbuster, he's cleaning the rug and it's all clean, and he goes there. Then the camera zooms out and everywhere around him is a total disaster. Well, that's how I feel, so I'm going to be cleaning up my table today. Okay, let's get to it. Open it up here, and I've used, any digitals that I may have used, I will list that as a credit, given credit in the description box. I try to be as fair as possible if I can remember. If I can't remember where I've got certain things, then it won't be in there, and I apologize, but I didn't use a whole lot of digitals in this. Here's just a little book plate, and I've made a little tuck spot. This is from a 1800s book that I have, and I just love the black and white illustrations and the drawings that are in there. This is actually two. There's a background, and I added this lady here. This is real old tape. I found it in one of the book pages, and I just, not of the 1800 one, but a different vintage book that I got at a antique store, and I was like, oh, really, real old tape. I don't have to make my own. So I have a pocket here, and that's where the seam binding just hangs over the front, which I really liked. And I just made this tag here, just did some stamping. And this is, it's got great texture. It's a natural paper, handmade paper, and then it opens up like that. And more of that tape here, and I've grunged and gessoed on top of this so it could be written on. Here's some thicker textured, like a handmade paper, and it's just got some deckled edging. I deckled edged almost everything in this, used gesso, inks, and all sorts of things like that. Vintage buttons here that I've just added some some string here, some embroidery thread, and a little piece of a vintage doily here and here. This is an authentic postcard, authentically vintage postcard. 1911, it says on there. It looks like a mom and aunt. And don't they just look like lovely sisters? I just love that. And I've really grunged this paper up and have a little bit of collaging, which includes this piece of a vintage ledger on this clip here. And I have one of my flower charms, and I do have a video for that. Playing card here that I've roughed up the edges probably of everything. This is a copy of a vintage picture here that I've just made this pocket out of. And a journal card here and a glassine bag that I've included. Some old autograph sheets. And this one, look at that beautiful writing. Friend Annie. And this is from 1891. And then some blank sheets that were from the book. And I just love that. Grunged up the glassine bag a little bit as well. Looks like it's just, I just air dry my coffee dyed glassine bags. And just did some collaging in the back, but that can be written on as well. This is from 1895. This is just the envelope here, 1895. And I love, again, the writing. Let me turn that around. And just made a just a journaling card here. And a vintage receipt from 1901. And it is brittle and fragile. But you can also write on the underneath here with just a little scrap of a vintage doily here, paper clip with these charms, and I like to roll the paper like that as well. The charms of a lock and key, a heart and key. Vintage receipt from 1894 here, and the little bits of gesso, some collaging with a French page here and an original ledger page that I've supported, which I do often in my pages for the bigger books that I embellish heavily. A piece of the inside of a vintage book here, just a music sheet and a scrap here of vintage sampler for lace. And this is just some computer paper that I just love how it turned out. Really grungy and has that gesso on it as well. Vintage postcard. It's a birthday card that's embossed, so it's raised here. I just love that. And this is from 1909. And this is from 1855, is from an autograph book that I have. Her name is Hannah, and in the back there's some extra writing that somebody wrote in. It looks like from 1924. Here's the back of that computer paper. I have just embossed here with a die. This is a piece of ledger from 1909. Now I seen this just embossing some old sheets and stuff, and I really loved it. Heather from Rubyandpearlxo, I believe. But she had done this on some papers, and I just love the look so much that I tried it. And of course it comes in the one that you cut and emboss at the same time, so I just did extra layers in there to try to get it. But this is so, it's so fragile, and because it wasn't a copy of a ledger page, that it did rip a little bit, but I glued it down and backed it and just like to put it over the page. Anyway, a tuck here, just a book page here that I've grunged up, a little scrap here, it's floral and it's embossed, and this vintage ledger here, 1902 I believe, but not ledger, letter. And I just love that. I just think that the writing is just so beautiful. And that sheet can be written on as well. Oh, let's bring you down a little bit. Clip it in my rusted clip here. And I've got another charm, just some beads, and it's in a brown tone. On the other side in this clip is a vintage receipt from I think it says 24. Just with this little journal card here. I thought it was pretty. And here I just made a snippet here and with it made a little pocket. It is gusseted because I like to do that a lot with my pockets and tucks. I don't always do it, but I just like when I know I'm going to be fitting a few things in there, it just gives it more room and room to grow as well. Copy of a cabinet card that I have. The edges are roughed up. This is a piece from that one of my 1800 books, and I just loved that. It's like a little poem there, and I backed it with some of the old paper plain on the back, and just a picture from, and this is a digital that I've curled up the edges and roughed up, and I just loved how that looked all together. Added a piece of antique lace here. This is a vintage from 1866, a French letter, and put a doily in the back of this grunged up envelope here, plus this little piece, this little flattened preserved rose piece here, and along with this tag that I've just put a little gesso on the top on the raised part because it is embossed. So I have the letter in here, and oh, I have another little receipt from 1833. I know I wasn't going to show everything, but it's exciting. I just love the authentic pieces in there. I made this little collage here. It's just with a poetry piece from a dictionary and a little book that I made that opens up. I thought it would be great for little notes and whatever, maybe a little poetry. You know, I'm not going to get the bow as perfect as it was, but I will retie later, I'm sure. Collage here with some pieces. I've used a little beeswax on top of this piece, just clipped from a Tim Holtz fabric. Added this piece here and put those pieces of tape here, the old tape on the back of this ledger. This, I believe, was a piece of a digital, and I just added it with old ledger sheets here, or old notebook sheets. This has 2 pockets. I've used, again, some of those pages from the 1800s book. They had a section for the letter box, and I thought it was fitting to add just different little memento type things in there. And I have a little, this one has shimmer on it, this little baby like a RSVP card type thing. Collaging and some decoupage here. This is from the book because it had different dates on it. And this is a copy of a vintage photo. I don't know if it's a digital or not, it may be. I'll check later. And that's part of a digital. And a vintage flinch card. And I just love, they look like they're having so much fun. And just a little piece here that I had. I just printed that off. This is a piece from the book. It's the floral letter. So if you know your flowers, you can fill in the spots, which I don't. And you could fill in the spots as you go. So there's that side, and there's this side. And I thought it was very fun, and it says floral letter up there. I have taken this and I've lined it and covered it and put some shimmers. It's that bronzy, coppery color shimmer on there. Put a few things in there, but I just love how when you line it and rough up the edges and stuff, just how grungy it gets, but still super pretty. So put that in the back part with the floral letter. Okay, this side, I made this out of a piece of ledger, added some different pieces of a little ephemera in there. On this vintage doily here, I just added this rhinestone. It's like a barrette that I just clipped on there. This flips open this way. Room for writing here, maybe a little picture or something in there. I just did some stamping on fabric here with this rusted pin. A little piece, a little scrap here that I've just made a little bit of a tuck and added this vintage doily piece there, just a scrap. This is part of a digital. I added some beeswax on this little scrap that I've stamped with this little doll. Added this piece of lace here. This is a vintage piece. I believe it was a trifold, and I had taken each section. I believe I used one other picture and another one of my journals. So this is another one. Isn't she just adorable? And this is a piece of a vintage letter, just a piece, just a scrap, just for the writing. It could be, you know, written on that side, but I just love the font and the writing. And it's on this super grungy piece of paper here. This I've made a journal card on. It's from a book page. And a little tag here, and a little scrap of bling here with a digital for a invitation to a ball. And I just made a tuck here with some poetry there, or a quote I should say. Little scrap piece here from 1916 on this book page. Here's an area for writing. It is a piece of an old autograph book, just a little washi and a little collaging there. This scrap from a vintage tablecloth has the little hooks down here, and I just added some charms that look vintage, and I just love the way it looks. This is some natural paper there. Little tag, little envelope. It's a narrow envelope that I made, and I just put a tag up in there, and I'm gonna leave that in there. But this piece right here at the end is part of a antique piece as well. This is an inside liner from a box. Don't really remember what one it is, but I love how it turned out with the grunge on it, and you can write on that. Some more writing space here. An old envelope. And it is, you know, ripped and a little fragile, but it's just so old. And just a piece of ephemera in there that I've made. And did some little collaging off to the side on that. And put this rusted paper clip on it with a charm, a rusted charm. Made a little tuck here with this heart, and I have added this vintage letter. Copy of a vintage receipt from the 1800s here, clipped on a copy of a cabinet card, a little charm here on this rusted paper clip. And I have two dates here. This one says 1902 and 1909. I like how it looked, you know, together like that. Added a piece of washi here to keep it together. But this was inside of a book, so that's original. And this is just a piece of a letter that I had, and it's, like I said, the date was 1902, and I just love that little scrap. There's just something about it. So I put that there, and this one, so it says 1909 outside there. Made this little tuck, grunged it up, and added some gesso. I put this copy of this vintage photo that I own, and I just thought that was really neat. Did a lot of collaging in the back there on this book page. Turn it over. Here is a tuck. Did some layers and collaging here. This is a digital little piece of paper there. This is an original from 1882. I'm not going to open it. And this is another original postcard here. Very vintage, and I just love these ladies. And I'm going to keep that here with them sticking up. I love the fact that everything did come together like I wanted it to look. Because sometimes it doesn't always work that way. Oh, now I don't remember how I had it, but anyway. But things are just sticking out everywhere, so if you like my chaos, you're going to love this. This is just a little digital, I believe, of flowers or from a book page. And I've just put some bling on there. I don't know if you can, oh, there you go. You can see it, just some glass beading there. Did some stamping on this vintage ledger from 1909. And you flip this up, and there's area on this vintage paper there to write. I just put a little snippet here. Here I made a pocket of it out of a vintage doily and added a vintage letter here that I'm not going to read. and a little scrap of these stamps and this little piece of very thin paper that I found in a book. These are vintage buttons here with another piece of that antique lace sampler. Here's a pocket that I've created from vintage lace here and a piece of a vintage doily. And I put a Victorian calling card in there. And it says some Stoughton Rose. And it's got all that grunginess to it naturally. And just that little glassine envelope for in the pocket. Just a little piece here that has some embroidery. Added this embroidery flower, some more poetry. Here's just a collage, and I added one of my favorite pictures, and I made it a little smaller. There's that piece from that book that had some of that tape on there. And I just made a tuck and made this little tag here. And I just like how everything just complements each other. And just here's a digital here. Some of my grungy paper. Some parchment paper and like a gold color. A vintage flash card here that I've grunged up and put this piece of lace over it. Took this from that 1800s book and put it on top. You know, not everything is flat, and there are little chipped pieces here and there just because it's old, and I use, you know, a lot of the authentic pieces. This that I backed because I wanted it to be a little more stable, but this is from one of those books as well. I added some brads here and made a little tuck and made a little journal card out of that. Again, the edges are all curled up and distressed. Piece of a letter here, a vintage receipt here from the early 1900s. And this was, I believe, it was attached to a book or a page or something. And that's original. And isn't she just beautiful? I think she is. And this, I added this clip just with a ball pin and added a little rusted envelope and a nib here from a quill pen. And I took some scraps, some vintage ledger scraps, and used these little hinge clips here and put it together for a little scrap piece. And I just love the different colors of the light blue and gray and the yellow and a little bit of book cloth. And they are fragile and very thin, but just so pretty together. And just did a little white stenciling on that. This is an envelope here that is a digital, and there's a couple little pieces of ephemera in there. And just a tag and a very old piece of a tablecloth here. A 1901 receipt, original in there. Made this pocket here out of this candle wicking fabric that I have. And I have a little bit left, but I just love how it looks. Did some sewing, made this card, and used a piece from 1897. I love the black and the contrast with the rice paper here that I used. And it's just a craft paper card. The other side of that flash card, made a little tuck here with a little piece of ephemera and some seam binding with this altered little, I call them key tags, but here's just another little journal card, another little piece here with this vintage lace on this, vintage music paper. This is part of a masterboard that I have. I have just a little bit left, so I just used a piece of that to make this tuck, added this little embroidered flower, and here is another original postcard. Look at how pretty she is. In the back, it's got like natural lines on it. I just thought it looked really, really good for this page. This side is Odulcina, I believe, was her digital here, and I thought it worked really well. A piece from another autograph book from 1905. And here's a little French vocabulary card and a couple little pieces of ephemera and this little glassine bag with a clip here, another copy of a cabinet card, a small cabinet card here for this lady. I love adding little old pictures. I just think it adds something nice to it. A little stamp up here, a piece from just a ripped, torn piece embroidered from a handkerchief. Vintage button that I've just added some thread there, a piece of a vintage doily here. Added these, just made a journal card on the back of this. I believe it's a Tim Holtz cabinet card backing. And I used some vintage ledger or graph paper for that. And made a journal card out of that. And also made this tuck back here using this vintage cabinet card copy. Made a couple of little tucks, so there's a little piece of ephemera in here and a little digital picture of this old church that I made into a card. A vintage doily there. And that is it for this. And I, again, love how it turned out. I will be putting this in my Etsy shop. So to check availability, I'm going to leave a link to my shop in the description box. But first, before you go, here are the 3 journals that I'm currently working on. They are, you know, I everything's sticking out. So as far as the cover part goes, they are about 5 3/4. I was gonna say 6, but 5 3/4. They're all a little different. This one's about 6. This one's about 5 3/4 as well. But these 3, I'm working on them. You can see the covers, you can see the beads that I've added to them. They're roughly about 40 pages front to back, but I'm working hard on them, and I will do another video with a quick flip through of them. And what will happen is, because I hit the you know, the 3,000 mark, and I know I'm over that now, and I thank everyone for that, but you'll get all the details of the giveaway, and the winning person will be able to choose between one of these. And I'm sorry, I apologize now, it has to be just in the continental US of A. I'm in a rural area, and it just seems to be difficult to ship things out internationally anymore, and I have done a few things in the past, so that may come back, but for now this is just for the USA only. Okay guys, well, thanks for watching. Again, thanks for subscribing to my channel and for all the likes and the comments. I appreciate it greatly. And I'm gonna finish these, and then I got some fairy stuff coming up with little journals that I will take you along with me. And I also have some bag journals that we're gonna work on together. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.